Gary Marvel, that should be.
Just one sec. Sorry, I need to introduce the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what we're doing. No, it's okay. So we are in Senate institutions. Today is April 29th, 2026. And we have one item today, which is H635, an act relating to eliminating Department of Corrections supervisory fees. We have Gary Marvel here, Deputy Director of Field Services, and then we also have Kristen Culver, Deputy Commissioner. And before I ask you to identify yourself and speak to us, I just want to identify us for you. You haven't been here before. So I'm Wendy Harrison, and I represent the Windham District.
Senator Major Windsor.
Russ Ingles, Essex District. John Benson, the Orange District.
Gary Marvel, Deputy Director of Field Services for the Department of Corrections.
Perfect, thank you. And so well, the reason we asked you to be here was to get information from folks in the field about how this bill would impact their work. There was an expectation that not having to charge the fees and doing all that administrative work would allow them to do other work. And obviously there's plenty to do.
Certainly, I mean, it's worth saying that I can, while we support broadly the idea of fees for an accountability standpoint, there is, of course, a certain amount of administrative burden that comes whenever you have any kind of collection of any fees, and probation officers generally don't like to be in the business of having to deal with money. We have a lot of other things that we have to ensure people are paying for. So, you know, some of the things that tend to take priority are, of course, I mean, it costs. There's a financial burden just getting in to see your probation officer. You have to make sure that people budget for things like transportation, for childcare if that's necessary. The primary things that I would consider would be things like making sure they're paying for their programming and for healthcare, make sure they're getting the medications if they need medications. So there's a lot of fees that are associated with being on supervision that are a requirement of your conditions. And those are sort of just inherent to just being on supervision. Because there's expectations from the court, from us, and from the parole board that you're going to do things, actively do things to reduce your risk. All of those things cost money or cost resources to be able to facilitate. Even just getting to volunteer, do community service, that's going to cost a certain amount of money. So it's part and parcel that it is going to cost you money to be on supervision. And this is another aspect of that.
Okay, so you mentioned transportation fees. Obviously, the department doesn't help with that. That's people do that on their own.
Yeah.
So the fees that we're talking about are other fees, obviously. So and then you mentioned the fees for their activities, not activities. It's the word.
So like typical conditions for someone. So, I mean, you can look at the type of supervision they're on. It's going to be related to the offense that they committed. So if you, for example, if you're on for a sex offense, you're going to have to pay for that treatment.
The treatment.
Right.
Okay.
If you need substance use treatment, you're going to have to pay a copay to meet with your counselor generally, depending on what kind of insurance you have, that sort of thing. But and those are normal expectations. And there's other ones too, like you might have to pay for crash, you might have to pay, it really depends, like if you're on for a DUI, for example. Almost all of the supervision expectations have something in terms of an expectation that you're going to engage in a service. Whether or not those services cost you money depends on what's available to you, what exactly the service is, and what the expectation is from the officer and the court and the formal court.
Being helpful, this is kind of a sideline, but just to have a list of all of those things.
It's
It'd be pretty like, yeah, sorry,
Just didn't
Kristen
know
Howard,
it.
Deputy Commissioner for the record.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was my fault.
Yeah, no, it's very lengthy. We can certainly work on compiling that and maybe give you kind of examples by like conviction type. I think might give you a better sense of what folks are looking at.
I think that would be really helpful, not necessarily just for this, but just
Yeah.
in general,
Yeah,
for folks to know that.
Right, yeah, yeah, and it's, we wouldn't be able to give you a completely comprehensive list just because it's gonna depend on the full report as well. And sometimes there's specialized expectations. For example, you might be expected to engage in a reparative board. You might be expected to see a mental health counselor. We don't necessarily know what the mental health counselor is going to charge, depending on what area you're going to, what counselor you're meeting with, whether you pay out of pocket. So we can give you a rough idea of the expectations and maybe some guesses about what those things might typically cost. They'd probably be pretty rough guesses.
Yeah, that's okay. And then just to flesh it out, just because that's going to take some time, but things that they don't have to pay for, but they do have to do.
okay,
That if that's possible,
sure.
that would
And
be
if
helpful
I can
too.
ask to clarify, so like community service don't have to pay for, but they might have to take time off of work,
Mhm.
have a like bus fee or something like that. Is that information helpful?
I think it would be just so that it's just a lot of corrections. Honestly, I would say most are not evident to the public. I think corrections is our largest department, and it's a big chunk of state money. And one of my goals is to just have it be more in the open. Because we call it corrections, so it's the intent is to help people not be in corrections anymore, right? To learn skills and exit and not come back.
Yeah.
So the whole recidivism, that's the whole conversation. But having just knowing what people are up against when they leave it's a big deal. Like I've been studying this and I don't know everything. So it would be really helpful to have a list like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. I think our mandate is pretty expansive, and I think folks still think corrections is just jail and prisons, and they don't understand kind of the depth of the work that we do and the folks that we serve. So we're more than happy to be transparent and give you anything
Yeah,
that
that'd
we
be
can
great.
present on it, or even just provide it
Yeah,
kind of
Yeah,
slowly
and
chip
then-
away. And
right. And then you could put it on your website. Just having the information first would be really helpful. And then you said programming, and I thought programming was something that corrections did with before and after somebody leaves. But do they have to pay for programming?
Incarcerated programming, no. So,
Okay.
yeah, we used to provide risk reduction programming in the community. We don't do that anymore. There are in part because we were sort of competing with the private market, and recommendations from entities like the council state government generally want those things to be sort of separated out, where the provider is not necessarily the entity that's also providing supervision, at least in the community. DVAP is domestic violence accountability programming. That is provided by separate DVAP programs through each county. We fund those. We provide enough money to cover the costs of that now, but that didn't used to be the case. So we've made some progress in that area. Sex offender treatment, risk reduction treatment, does have what you call a copay, is a portion of it that are responsible for. That's because we contract with independent contractors to provide that. And we cover the majority of it, but they are expected to cover some of it. That's still a pretty small fraction of the people we supervise overall. And also just generally, like I said before, mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling, any of that is generally co-pays go off that.
Right. And a fair amount of that is mandatory, right? So if they don't go, they get set back some way.
Yeah, it depends on their conditions. But it also, I would argue for a lot of them, it's what's necessary to keep them stable.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. If you have somebody who their crimes associated with them being in active use, they might need to engage in that counseling in order to get the support they need to stay sober. If they need a psychiatric medication, they might need to continue meeting with a psychiatrist or a general practitioner. And there's just fees associated with that, just like it is for us.
Okay.
As practice citizens.
Great. Thank you. So I just kind of barged in with a bunch of questions. Is there any, did you have a plan of what to tell us or?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I can answer questions about how it sort of plays out in the office. I mean, I think our general position is that it's useful for accountability, but it does create friction. It does create friction with that individual if they have other competing interests and costs that are associated with it.
Okay. Any questions? And still one more, probably one. How many, I don't know, do you call them clients or,
Supervised individuals.
okay, so how many of those per parole officer?
45 is the cap for risk management cases. So those are folks we meet with regularly, for whom there's a higher risk associated with their crime, for whom certain active expectations of supervision are still in play, like for example, completing treatment. Then there's response supervision or administrative supervision, another term for it. That's another called telephone reporting, where you have a much larger case, so 150 is the cap for that. And there's usually one administrative supervisor per office, depending on the size of the office. So those are the lower risk, generally less violent crimes, those sort of things, or they've been on supervision for a really long time and they've been approved for a reduction of their supervision to administrative supervision.
Okay. Right. Might be all we have. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it. And thank you for your work.
Well, thank you.
Oh, and do you have anything to add?
I don't have
or-
anything additional from the last times, but you
Okay.
know, we're around. Come up with questions, happy to answer them. I'm ready or come at me.
I think we're ready to vote the bill. So, if there's anything that comes up from your perspective, let me know.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So that is all we have. Does anyone else have anything they want to talk about? Okay.
I saw your note on the fire escape versus.
Oh, yes.
So I didn't know
Egress.
whether you wanted to talk about that or not.
Just want to know if y'all are okay. I mean, you can verbal.
Madam Chair, speaking of which, Scott Morjack, fiscal office, John Gray was in the house this morning. Or this afternoon. What day is today? Wednesday, Thursday, could be Monday.
Wednesday.
It could be next
Day
week already.
2, we call it day 2.
But he was there earlier today and going through the changes this have been made. And he mentioned egress versus fire escape. So they heard egress and they were the terminology, just so you know.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's helpful.